Welcome to this ability clinic where little people teach big lessons. Even though you acknowledge that you feel relatively new to the community, I feel like the work that you've been doing and the relationships you're making are really a good model for like, yes, I'm still learning. We're learning from each other. We're sharing stories. People have different perspectives. Like we don't always do the same thing. And that's fantastic for, even newer advocates in this space. I mean, I've been doing my YouTube channel for like 5-6 years now, which is wild to me. And when I first started, I was like, green, and now I feel it's a little bit more comfortable. Like I can I'm kind of learning from all of the like beginner lessons, but still there's so much more to learn. There's so many more people to tap into, to collaborate with.
I've been surprised that one of the most common questions by presenters, but also from audiences sometimes, is what is the language we should use? And at first I was like, what do they mean? The first time I heard that, I didn't quite understand. And this is after I had prepared the press kit you're talking about with language about disability and dwarfism. But I realized that there's a real impulse when people are exposed to, and the film invites them into little people community, to want to know the words, and to get it right, wanting to get it right and to know what's a bad word, what's the term I should use. And I guess my confusion sometimes is like, what certain little people have said to me early in my process when I was like, what do you call, your dwarfism, or what should I call it? They'll just say, why don't you call me my name? It took a second for that to hit me. And now I've just taken it in so much that I'm like, oh, do you really need to refer to someone's dwarfism unless they are bringing it up first?
Right, like if it's centered in the conversation for some reason.
Right. But I also really appreciate that people want to get it right.
Yeah.
And I didn't make a film that is expository and it has little, explainers in it. So this is why in the press kit, but also, on our website and with Independent Lenses, the broadcasts outreach that's coming up, we're trying to make it really visible for people after they see the film, if they have those questions, to learn about the nuance, because there is a lot of nuance. Little person is the most commonly accepted term, but not everyone likes that term. And dwarf is a term that some people don't like. It's a reclaimed term. Obviously, I use it in the title of the film in part to name myself. So it's sort of like queer. It's a term that used to be used, or it could be used as an insult, but some people claim it and wear it proudly. And dwarf occupies a similar place, with some people not wanting to be, identify themselves that way.
Yeah. I always encourage people that I'm teaching to ask, like it never hurts to ask what someone's preferred terminology is. And I really try to universalize how disability or, these terms surrounding any marginalized experience, they aren't construed as bad words. Someone can claim them as an identity, or they may not, but they may have other like needs pertinent to their experience that you can be specific about, like in a healthcare setting. And so, preferred language is it's such a rich, great topic. And I wanted to ask you about your identity, because by the end of the film, the film reveals that you do test positive for a genetic difference that confirms the diagnosis of hypochondroplasia.
Yep.
What does having this diagnosis after all this time mean to you? Has it changed your outlook and your approach to moving through the advocacy community?
It's really corroborating to get that diagnosis. And because I'm an in-betweener, I'm a tall dwarf. I'm someone who many people say it's clear as day that I have a form of dwarfism. And also many people are like, I don't see it. Mm-hmm. And my own perception of myself, it's like two completely different ways of seeing the same thing. It's one of those like images that if you look, it's a whole different, I've talked about my experience as shimmery. Like sometimes it's hard through my whole life, it was hard to kind of put my finger on, is this real or not? Literally lived with me up through my mid 40s when I started making this project and really and also looking for the medical diagnosis. So having the diagnosis, as I say in the film, it's not a piece of information that I'm going to use to fix myself, or even undergo much that's different medically. It informs me a little bit about certain choices I make, about activities and understanding of when I have certain kinds of joint pain and things like that. So it does help me understand and make some lifestyle choices around, for myself. But much more important than that to me is, as someone who hasn't been, for whom my condition wasn't clear, and what it was called. And as I say in the beginning of the film, like, what is it? And are there other people like me? It is so kind of grounding to have that knowledge and to know that within my cells lives this mutation. It's not something I'm imagining. And there also are other people who have this. And one of the things that's been really exciting, I think, it's been really exciting and meaningful to become part of Little People community and disability community. And a sort of special experience within that is when I meet other tall dwarfs who are, can range from a little shorter than me to some, I've talked to one person who's taller than me. And to have a shared experience of knowing our bodies are different in relation to the built world, and also being in that in-between space of being, weirdly, as a short person, the taller one in Little People community.
You have a shared shimmering experience.
A shared shimmering, exactly. Yeah. So I just met, a friend's husband who I hadn't met before, who has hypochondroplasia, and we had it's always like a really interesting and fun experience to meet people who have that shared experience. And there's a lot that's unsaid about it. When you connect, you're like, oh, yeah, when you know. I know what you know that we don't have to say we know. So there's something about that too, is just being amongst my Little People community and friends. There are certain things that I know are shared experiences that we all carry with us, that we've done so much work to navigate, and they don't have to be explained. Having that kind of community and that understanding with a group of people is amazing.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Just kind of like you were speaking earlier about sort of the therapeutic benefit outside of a doctor's office, like community and shared experience.
Yeah.
You really touched on in the film how there's pressure from both internal and external forces to perhaps change one's body to conform better with society or with your own identity. And this conflict applies not only to the LP community, but just many people in the wider disability community. It also made me think of like the transgender and the queer communities. I was wondering about what your thoughts were on how much society could and should change to be more accessible and inclusive. And do you see movement in the right direction of striving for maybe not absolute inclusivity, but better, more inclusivity?
Yeah, I do see movement in the right direction. I mean, there is as we know, there's a lot of difficult stuff going on in the world that we who really value inclusivity and know that it's a long-term and ongoing project of moving towards a society that expects and makes room for and really values a range of bodies, experiences, perspectives. I know there's a lot of us on that I want to say team, but it's so much beyond a team. There really are many forces and efforts in the world going in that direction, that have consolidated, that have come in and out of commercial favor, but the work goes on. And I mean, I think the interesting thing is when there's moments where we see progress, right? Where the ADA gets passed, or where, where there's these watershed moments, there's been decades and decades of work that was going against the grain and against the sort of powers that be, the prevalent forces. And that's happening now. That's the work of inclusivity and to kind of build community and make change in our world on all levels, whether it's, legal, medical, aesthetic, artistic, is really active. And it's great to be part of these movements. Yeah.
I try to feel proud of it, and I try to still be welcoming to even the most resistant, ableist perspective, only because what I've learned from the community is that, like, when someone doesn't feel welcome, that's what's traumatizing and harmful. And
Right.
so any response of rejection or fear, I really try to give the benefit of doubt of, like, oh, they need to feel like they belong here too. Like, they need to feel like this is for them too. It's a challenge to find a way to make accessibility, inclusion, the disability justice movement accessible to people who don't think it's for them. I truly believe films like yours, the Artist Coalition, just, media representation, just ways that represent disability authentically is one of the best ways to welcome people who otherwise don't live that experience on a day-to-day basis. And objective things like making sure venues are accessible. You reminded me, there's an organization called Forward Doc who has like a accessibility checklist for festivals. And it's like things like that. It's like we're making it into fact. It's like some people need this, some people need that to access a film festival. Let's just collect that data and make sure they can access the festival. It's not about political beliefs or identity. It's about what people need. I try to really distill it down to that.
Yeah, it's, wow, I love everything you just said. And, the challenge of, like the big tent is is a tough one, right? Because how do you welcome in someone who might have values that would undo like the existence of, inclusive community? At the same time, I think you're right that what you just described of trying to welcome everyone in is an act of being curious, right? You talked about well, there's an uncuriosity in that first conversation. And I think curiosity is so important, right? Because it's well, what is this? Where are you coming from? And also we usually get back what we give, right? So if we're starting with okay, let me hear about your questions or concerns, or I don't know, I feel like I'm speaking vaguely, but I just really like the model you just put out there of trying to build access literally to accessibility by making pathways that people can find their way. And I agree with you. I think in terms of like the impact that, I hope this film has, that other artwork can have, because it's kind of sending out into the universe perspectives and people that many people don't have any exposure to, right? Like, I mean, I didn't happen to have a friend or coworker or teacher who was a little person when I started this project. So, and I think that's pretty common, that there's many people that actually have never had a personal relationship with anyone who's a little person. And so I'm hoping, the film adds to the people you've heard from, you've gotten to know, who are amazing, like appealing, like smart, beautiful people that you just now have exposure to. So, I think that's the hope.
Julie, thank you so much for creating this documentary and highlighting these perspectives. Your film is a crucial piece of authentic disability representation that the world needs to see. How can people watch your film?
Yeah, thank you. Well, on April 6th, the film will be nationally broadcast on the PBS acclaimed show Independent Lens. And maybe I can provide some links for you to add.
Yes, we will definitely link it down in the description.
People will be able to watch it literally broadcast to their television. If you have the kind of TV that has an app, you can, smart TV, you can add the PBS app, and for free without subscribing for 3 months, the film will be available for everyone to watch. They also actually stream it through the PBS YouTube channel. So there's going to be lots of places. There also will be some local screenings at libraries and community centers around the country, and those can also be tracked through the Independent Lens website. There's also another couple of ways to stay in touch are through social media. So the Tallest Dwarf Film, all one word, the Tallest Dwarf Film, on Instagram and Facebook are where we'll be posting, any local in-person events, but also just the info about where to find the film on your device or your the way you can see it.
That's awesome. Sounds like there's going to be many ways to access the film and in the Tallest Dwarf cinematic universe. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit that like button and subscribe to Disability Clinic and check us out on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and learning. See you next time.